You might think that being paralyzed means that you can't have success, but Stephen Hawking proves that theory wrong.
January 1942. I was born precisely 300 years after the death of the great
scientist Galilei Galilei. He grew up in Oxford, England. His parents' house was in the northern London, but was considered a safe place to have babies during World War II.
1953.
He started at St. Albans High School at the age of 11, where he wasn't an exceptional student, but had a big interest in mathematics and physics. That was the reason he got the nickname Einstein.
1959.
Stephen Hawking began at the University College, Oxford, the same as his dad. He originally wanted to study mathematics, but it wasn't available, so he pursued physics instead, even though his father wanted him to study medicine.
After 3 years in college, he was awarded his first degree in science.
1962.
Stephen Hawking went to the University of Cambridge to do research in cosmology, which is the study of the universe. He began showing interest in black holes and time travel. He was the only one working in that area at the time. His supervisor was Dennis Sciama, although he hoped to get Fred Hoyle.
1963.
Stephen Hawking was diagnosed with ALS. He says that it doesn't affect him that much and doesn't prevent him from many things. It even helped him being such a well-known scientist as he is today. But back then it came as a shock to him, even though he had not been very active physically in his life.
Only a short time after his 21st birthday, he went to the hospital for tests. He was at the hospital for 2 weeks. They took muscle samples from his arm, stuck electrodes in him, and they injected radio fluid so they could see in his spine.
The doctors didn't know what it was, but it was most likely going to kill him after a few years, which was a bit of a shock to him.
Most people die of the disease after a few years, but Stephen Hawking is 70 years old and still alive.
1965.
He gets married to Jane Wilde. She was a language student. Jane cared for him and they got 3 children together, called Robert, Lucy and Timothy.
1969.
Stephen got his second child, Lucy. The ALS disease was also starting to slow down, but in September he was forced to use a wheelchair.
1973.
Stephen left the Institute of Astronomy and came to the Department of Applied Mathematics and Theoretical Physics.
1974.
Stephen Hawking turned into a celebrity within the scientific world when he showed with his research that black holes aren't what scientists had thought they were. Stephen demonstrated that matter in the form of radiation can escape the gravity force of a collapsed star. Hawking radiation was born.
1979.
Stephen Hawking got the Location Professor of Mathematics title at Cambridge, which is regarded one of the best academic posts in the world. It was precisely 300 years after Isaac Newton got it, who was the discoverer of gravity.
1985.
Stephen Hawking gets a lung disease. He gets an operation. He loses his voice in the procedure, so he has to talk through a computer.
The computer screen is mounted to the arm of his wheelchair. On the computer he ran a program called Equalizer, written by a company called Word Plus Inc. A cursor moves across the upper part of the screen. When he has to make a sentence, he can send it to a speech synthesizer. His synthesizer is made by Speech Plus. It gives him an accent that has been described variously Scandinavian, American or Scottish. He can also use Windows through an interface called EZ Keys, again made by Word Plus Inc.
1988.
He writes the bestseller, A Brief History of Time. It sells over 10 million copies.
1990.
Stephen gets in a divorce with Jane Wilde.
1995.
Stephen Hawking gets married again, this time it with his nurse, Elaine Mason. She was previously married to David Mason. the designer of the first version of Hawking's talking computer.
1997.
He wrote the film Stephen Hawking's Universe.
2006.
Stephen Hawking gets divorced with his second wife. According to some other nurses, Elaine was abusing him.
2009.
Stephen Hawking steps off the location professor of mathematics post.
2010.
The documentary series Into the Universe
with Stephen Hawking comes out. My goal in life is simple. It is complete understanding of the universe, why it is as it is, and why it exists at all.